Welcome. Today, we're going to open up a diplomat's briefing file and really break down the strategic masterclass of a rising nation that's navigating a super complex world. We are, of course, talking about Bangladesh and how it's managing to chart its own course right in the middle of a great power rivalry.
Okay, let's dive right in. Our briefing starts here, in the Indo-Pacific. Now, you have to understand, this region is way more than just a map of sea lanes. It's the entire planet's new strategic center of gravity. We're talking about a region that powers more than 60% of the global economy, and it's home to these maritime choke points that are basically the arteries of global trade. What happens here, well, it affects absolutely everyone.
And this whole region is being shaped by two really powerful competing visions. On one side, you've got the US and its allies pushing their Indo-Pacific strategy, which all centers on this idea of a free and open order. And on the other side, you've got China's massive Belt and Road Initiative, focused on building huge infrastructure projects and economic links. It's a massive geopolitical chessboard, and the stakes could not be higher.
Now, all this competition creates what experts call strategic uncertainty. And what you're looking at here is pretty much a map of that uncertainty. Will China's influence keep growing? Is the U.S. going to stay committed to the region? And maybe most importantly, are all the other nations here going to be forced to pick a side, or can they find their own way? The answers to those questions create this incredibly complex environment full of both risk and opportunity.
Okay, so with that big picture in mind, let's zoom in on our case study. Bangladesh. As a rising economic power, it finds itself smack in the middle of this great power competition, and it's facing what you might call a classic balancing dilemma.
You see, Bangladesh has these huge ambitions. It's already the second largest economy in South Asia, and it is right on the cusp of a major milestone, graduating from the list of least developed countries. But to make that future a reality, it has to manage its economic relationships so carefully. And that creates a really unique diplomatic challenge.
Here's the dilemma in a nutshell. On one hand, just look at these numbers. The United States is, by a long shot, its biggest customer. This is especially true for its powerhouse ready-made garment industry. That trade relationship is absolutely crucial. We're talking about the lifeblood of the economy and millions of jobs.
But on the other hand, it's China that is the top source of the foreign investment needed to literally build the country's future. The money for the bridges, the ports, the power plants that are totally essential for Bangladesh to hit its development goals, a huge chunk of it comes from here.
So you see the problem, right? How does a nation keep climbing the ladder when its top customer and one of its top investors are strategic competitors? For Bangladesh, choosing a side isn't just difficult, it's just not an option. It would be a disaster for its national interests.
So how in the world does Bangladesh solve this incredibly tricky dilemma? Well, the answer lies in a core principle, one that's actually guided its foreign policy right from the very beginning.
The entire strategy hinges on this one key concept: multilateralism. It's a simple but powerful idea. Instead of choosing between the big powers, Bangladesh chooses to engage with all of them, using international organizations and forums as the venue. It basically uses cooperation as a tool to protect its own independence. And listen, this is not some new policy they just cooked up. This idea is foundational. It's written directly into Article 25 of the country's constitution. This commitment to non-interference, equality, and international law, it's the very bedrock of their entire foreign policy.
Okay, so that's the principle. But how does Bangladesh actually put this into practice in the real world, in the high-stakes game of the Indo-Pacific? Let's take a look at the playbook.
First thing they did was lay out their own vision, their Indo-Pacific outlook. And you have to pay attention to the language here because it is so deliberate. Notice how it talks about an inclusive, rule-based international system, not an order, which kind of implies one power is in charge. It puts economic development for everyone first and flat out avoids taking sides in military blocs. It's a really clear statement of neutrality.
A huge part of this economics-first approach is what they call the blue economy. And what that really means is sustainably using the incredible potential of their maritime resources in the Bay of Bengal. We're talking everything from fishing and tourism to shipping and energy. This isn't just a side project, it's a core pillar of their future growth, and it provides a perfect, neutral area for international cooperation. And here's where things get really interesting, where that economic ambition connects directly to a critical security need. A staggering 90% of all of Bangladesh's trade goes by sea. So keeping those sea lanes safe and open isn't just some abstract policy goal, it's an economic lifeline. And that makes maritime security a common interest it can work on with all of its partners. So to make all this happen, Bangladesh is super active in regional groups. Through an organization like BIMSTEC, for example, it works with all its neighbors around the Bay of Bengal to build transport and trade links, literally weaving the region's economies together. Then through a different group like IORA, the focus shifts to shared problems like climate change. See the pattern? It's all about finding common ground instead of getting dragged into conflict.
So, what's the big picture here? What can we really take away from this whole strategic approach? Honestly, it's nothing short of a masterclass in how to maintain your autonomy.
And this right here is the heart of the strategy. By always insisting on working through these multilateral groups, Bangladesh carves out its own diplomatic space. It takes a situation that could be a huge vulnerability, being stuck between giants, and turns it into a source of leverage. It simply refuses to be forced into an either-or choice.
I think the key thing to remember is that this isn't just about survival. It's a very deliberate, forward-looking plan. The goal is to secure the nation's development, to get that LDC graduation, and then to transition, to go from being a country that just reacts to others' agendas to one that can actually be a bridge between powers and help set the rules for regional cooperation.
And that leaves us with one final and really crucial question. This friendship to all, malice toward none strategy has worked incredibly well for Bangladesh. But as it gets stronger, as its economy grows and it becomes a more influential player on the world stage, is that delicate balancing act going to get harder and harder to sustain? Especially in a world where the rivalries just seem to be getting more intense. Well, that remains the ultimate test.